And first off, Happy New Year. It is 2021. 2020 is in our rearview mirror. Not that we're out of the woods. There's still a lot of things that we have to deal with from that year. But nonetheless, hopefully there is optimism in your perspective in terms of where we're headed. And this is my vlog where I kind of update you on my creative journey, my life, and things like that, to provide specific tangible takeaways, inspiration perhaps, in your own creative endeavors, right? That's the intent of this. And so that's what I will do. Now, before I get into it though, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It means a lot to me. So let's get into it, right? I think a good place to start is, what are my 2021 intentions? Well, there's a number of things. Number one, as far as friends and family go, I want to have more three-dimensional relationships. And what I mean by that is, in the vaguest sense, like if I talk to somebody, rather than just talk about like, hey, how's it going? How's the weather? This and that. Really just get down to brass tacks and kind of get to the meat of a conversation, really be honest, be meaningful and whatnot, right? Rather than just neither of us saying anything really significant or meaningful that we don't want to be talking about, right? It's like if we're going to spend the time to talk and we enjoy each other's presence in whatever form that may be, currently Zoom, phone call, whatever, well then let's act like it, right? Because that's kind of a big thing of 2020 is, no tomorrow is guaranteed. And why don't we just make the most of our time here? And I think there's a way to do that. One of the ways I've always kind of maintained that is to work with my friends, right? Because then in that sense, we're doing something meaningful. We're creating art to this world and we're getting to hang out, right? So that to me is a good definition of three-dimensional relationship. And, one of the things I'm curious, that I kind of encourage you is to look at what that it means as far as for you. If you had to define what is a three-dimensional relationship for you, what does that entail? Rather than just having continual surface level relationships. And not that you do, and not that I did either, but just I'm much more kind of conscious of it and aware of it, and so that's what I'm trying to maintain. And there's kind of a couple of other things, but mainly the ones that would make sense to talk about. I'll just kind of give a list right now and then break it down a little bit. Is I want to update my nonfiction book, Master Mental Fortitude, which I put out in 2019. I want to, now that 20 hindsight is in the rearview mirror, I think a lot of those lessons within that book still apply, but I've certainly matured and learned some new things. So I think it deserves a good little update. So I'm working on that. After that, there's new things that I want to write about, and so I want to put together a second book. I've always intended Master Mental Fortitude to be kind of not just a one and done thing, but an ongoing sort of series, much in the way that I do this. And so in that sense, I want to create volume 2, like it doesn't negate what's in volume 1. Like they sort of work in tandem and build upon one another, and that's what I intend to do. In 2020, I finished up my coming of age novel. And so I kind of put a pause on querying agents and literary publishing houses for the simple fact that 2020 was taxing on everyone. And one of the things that I realized was, right now those agents were very much trying to just get what they needed to done, both on a personal and professional level, and they were also had things that they had to deal with in terms of their clients. And I'm not saying that as far as like their clients being any difficult, but like, when in the year that we had, they had to kind of focus on that because that's what made sense, right? And so in that sense, my query letter presented new business. Fine, maybe an opportunity and things like that, but just something at the moment that wasn't necessarily a top priority. They had to, like we all do, hunker down and whatnot. But now, as we enter 2021, the opportunity presents itself to kind of, we're all sort of finding our footing, hopefully. But now I think people are open to new business. So that's a goal of mine. I want to finish up the how I made my first feature film book. If you've never heard me talk about this, I want to do basically like a Robert Rodriguez style Rebel Without a Crew type book, and just chronicling my journey, the lessons learned, and how I did things. And then the most creative and sort of ambitious one, in my opinion, is I want to maybe not necessarily finish my second feature film, but certainly at least have filmed it in 2021. So that is called In Search of Sunrise. And yeah, that's kind of the big one, And speaking of that, so where I'm at with it currently is the script is being revised. I've done a few drafts at this point and continue to polish it further and further. And kind of during the holiday break, I was talking with my mentor, John Comerford, and we've essentially created an updated outline of what we want things to be. And based off of that, I'm rewriting the script. And what we're doing is, basically breaking up into 4 chunks. So Act 1, then Act 2 up until the midpoint, then the midpoint to Act 3, and then Act 3. And we're assessing, each one of those in those terms. So right now I'm in the midst of the second act going into the midpoint. I'm almost finished with that revision, but it's been helpful in that way because we know the goalposts we need to hit. We know based on the outline where we're going. And so we're able to, by kind of compartmentalizing it in this way, we're able to really make sure each of these parts works and builds upon the next. So that way, when we get to the end, it's a very good polished script, right? And I'm sure there'll be changes then. There always are, but they're going to start to be more and more minor. Just like even these ones, ultimately, they're not major changes. They're more just clarification on certain plot points to make sure that they hit home. And so that's been a really exciting process and whatnot. One of the things that we're aiming to do is to film a 3-minute segment of the film as a proof of concept. So, and that, as of right now, we're planning to do that on the weekend of January 22nd/20th and the 23rd. So that's a Saturday, Sunday. And we'll see, of course, it's all contingent on how things go. And certainly the biggest factor is COVID. But, we're going to do it as safely as possible. In this sense, everyone's going to get tested multiple times type of thing. It's going to be a very low-key shoot. So everything's going to be filmed against green screen. And my friend Khalil, he's going to help me set up and rig the lighting and so forth. And then it's essentially going to be me and 1 or 2 actors at most at any given point. So 3 people on set. So overall, keeping it very safe in that regard, or as safe as we can, right? While still being able to move forward. And the good news is, primarily, it's going to be one actor at any given point. And there's just a few interactions with multiple people, and those will be kept short. They're just very quick interactions. So, probably knock those out in like 30 minutes. Which might sound like a lot, but in film terms, it's not. So, so looking forward to that. And Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see this come together. One of the things that I'm trying to do with it is keep it very bare bones. This is like, in essence, a test to ourselves as well of, can we pull this off in the most, like, what's the least viable way we can pull this off? Because if we can pull it off for basically next to no money, then we know we can do the film that way, right? And anything beyond that, well, it's a bonus, right? And so, not that I necessarily want to do a film bare bones, but if we can kind of do it, then we know it can be done if push came to shove. So that's encouraging. And so, in that regard, that's the goal, right? And so, hence why, I mean, part of the reason we're filming on green screen is for COVID reasons, and it just makes it easier rather than going to locations. And when you go to a location, you have to have like a location manager stay there with you, and just so forth. It opens up the door for more people. So green screen shoot made the most sense. The thing that I am going to be doing is I have to kind of go to some of these places and take photo references as the backgrounds, so we can place that in. One of the interesting parts of this, what's supposed to happen is there's a part, this is like in a very, without giving too much away, a simulated world. This is within like a simulation, and kind of like there's supposed to be glitches like you would have in, let's say, a video game, something like that, right? When something goes wrong. And so there's this part where we see a lake and people swimming in the lake, and it's not correct. And it being January, and most, like, first off, in LA there are no real lakes, and certainly it's January, so they would be cold and things like that. And so, my mind, one of the big things that I started thinking about was, how do we do this, And what's fun and crazy to me is once you really start kind of breaking it down, you can create solutions. And so, as odd as it might sound to even you if you are a filmmaker, my idea was like, let's film people pretending to swim. And when I say swim, I don't mean like necessarily like actually swimming, more just like, they're just kind of keeping to the surface and just, using their arms to stay afloat type of thing. And film that against the green screen, and we'll fill it in with, water later, which might sound crazy, but if you've seen me talk about this movie, first off, that it's not a live action movie, it's going to be a rotoscope movie. And so by even placing the water as kind of like a frame of reference, it doesn't have to be perfect, because again, that's not the final visual. The visual is going to be kind of animated, right? And secondly, it's supposed to be a glitchy version of that. So in fact, that sort of aspect of it works to the nature of what the story is trying to tell. And so it is interesting to me in that sense, when you really start breaking things down into their little bits, you can start to solve anything. And I call this like my Sin City film shoot, because I'm filming people that are supposed to be interacting together, but I'm not filming them interacting actually on set. Everyone's going to be separate. So if you're unfamiliar, Robert Rodriguez basically shot Sin City against a green screen, and he shot like entire scenes where people are moving and talking, but he never had them together, or at least not, certain people. And so I'm kind of doing my own version of that, and I look forward to that. My sort of joke is like, if this works, it'll be a miracle. And it's an ambitious thing, but I think it'll come together really well. And if nothing else, I'm going to learn a lot. It's a proof of concept, as I said, not just for other people to see, but for ourselves. Like, can we do this? And one of the things that I'm going to be making is learning how to do reflective surfaces, meaning like this person initially starts off in like this void, but it's like, okay, you don't want to just have them in like just complete darkness. It's like, you want to project the idea that there is a floor to this void that they're quote unquote standing on. So it's like, okay, well, can I take their image and reflect that so it looks, like as if the floor perhaps is shiny, and doing these certain things. So yeah, that'll kind of be cool. One of the interesting things, so, we want to have, since we're going to be shooting this against the green screen, we want to have as much information as possible, meaning the resolution. And it would be amazing to shoot in 4K or even just 2K. But the camera I, have and want to shoot on that that has really good quality is my Blackmagic, which I have the older version, which is only the 1080p. So it's not a 2K and it's not a 4K, right? And so what I'm thinking, there's plenty of shots that I can do that I can cheat where, because again, it's against the green screen, I create the rest of the background. So, and especially if it's one person at any given time, I can flip the camera horizontal. And so even though it's shooting 1080, I'm kind of cheating the resolution because I'm giving, it more height and I'm not concerned about the width, right? And so in that regard, I buy myself, quote unquote, more resolution, right? So I'm going to be sort of utilizing that trick and as much as I can. So, the times that perhaps a person has to walk from, let's say point A to point B, then yes, I have to use the, and let's say it's a profile shot, right? Specifically, if they're doing that, if they're walking across the screen, then yes, I sort of kind of have to do it that way now. In theory, I could do it by putting them on, let's say, a treadmill, but that becomes a little bit more elaborate, and I don't have that ability at the moment to be able to pull that off. But that, as I say it out loud, that could be a possibility. It's just crazy enough to work if I really wanted to go that route. But anyway, yeah, I mean, the point is of all of this, I'm excited for this. B, like all things, once you really start kind of asking questions, very specific questions, you can start getting answers. And what seems impossible becomes possible. That's the fun part. And overall, the goal of this is to put it together, package it with other material, the script, the budget, a pitch deck, things of that nature. I'm going to also do kind of, I don't know, almost like a pitch video where I talk about the story and so forth. Basically all things that someone might want to see in order to invest in the movie. So that's what all this is for. Now, going into that, the big aspect that I'm kind of thinking about is, do I just basically give someone a percentage of this, of like whatever the funds might be as like a finder's fee to really help package this thing together? And when I say package it, like I'm going to do the work, but like, basically get their input as well of like, okay, no, change this, blah, blah, blah. And then really going out and pounding the pavement, so to speak, to try to get funding for this. And I have some people in mind. So we'll see. And like, listen, I could take a shot on myself and just do it in that way, which is still an option. But in my mind, I'm also like, you know what? If I have a word for 2020, it's upgrade, meaning I want to elevate the things that I do and how I do them. And so, having someone represent this piece of work is a form of upgrade for me. And so it's a healthy exercise to go and try. If no one bites or they're not interested or whatever, then no harm, no foul. I'll do it myself. But we'll kind of see. That'll be an interesting part. The other kind of thing that I was kind of listening to over the break was this idea of people either have reasons or they have results. And then this comes from Marie Forleo. And I thought about that because, yeah, one of my biggest pet peeves is the people who talk about doing something and but just never do it. And sometimes people talk about doing something and then I'm like, okay. And then they're surprised when like I take a first step towards doing the thing that we talked about, and like, oh, because it's a surprise, there are some people that just aren't used to, I think, and I used to be this way, so I don't knock anyone, but like, who talk about big grand visions, but don't necessarily take the steps towards it. And, I became frustrated with myself whenever I would do that. And so now, it's just in my perspective, A, to do those things, and B, if there is a grand idea, I don't necessarily, I write it down. I don't necessarily dismiss it if it's too grand for in the moment, but I write it down so that way it's there. If I ever need it, if I ever want it, if I want to revisit it, do it, and so forth. But I also know, like, you know what, maybe right now is not the right time to do it because I'm focused on X, Y, and Z. But where it ties into results and reasons, I think it's a good question to ask ourselves whenever something's not going our way. Is it because we're given reasons why it's not going our way? Because if we're getting the results that we want, then it means we're doing it. But if we have just a ton of reasons why that's not happening, yes, examine that. But ultimately overcome those reasons, right? Because the fact of the matter is, there could be any number of reasons why something shouldn't work or you shouldn't do something, right? I mean, there's so many reasons why my proof of concept could fail, right? But I'm going to go forward with it and try to get results, and if there are shortcomings during certain parts, then I will adjust and try to solve for the problem. It's the only way to learn. And so, I mean, ultimately, that's what I'm most excited about with this shoot, is I'm going to learn so much. These are all things I've never done before. I mean, filmmaking, yes, and so forth on the surface, but the specifics, these are new things. I filmed against green screen, but not to this degree, right? So very exciting stuff for me. Speaking of filmmaking, the one thing that I really was thinking about, because I'm helping a friend edit his movie, and there's certain things that I'm noticing from the acting side, from the filming side, from the writing side, and all things that are in the moment, they're all fixable, right? Ultimately, that's what editing is putting together and making things work. But one of the things I thought about was how very much so new artists, up-and-coming artists, and perhaps even like professional artists, they don't watch the dailies. And I really think, especially for someone brand new, especially someone still kind of even on the come up, really, in terms of filmmakers, really needs to watch the dailies. I don't care if you're an actor, if you're a producer, a director, a writer, a cinematographer, watch the dailies because it's invaluable. It's no different than, it's great as an athlete to go to practice and do all that. But watching tape back of yourself, I mean, that becomes a whole nother thing. That elevates you to a new level. And so watching dailies is the equivalent of that for me in filmmaking terms. And so it's kind of very interesting. I'm going to try to work with my friend to, in a gentle, kind way, to showcase some of the things I've noticed, so that way him and others, that were part of it can learn and take that moving forward. And we can, take the movie that they have and continue to polish it and so forth. It's not like the things that I'm talking about in any way negate the movie, but certainly, it's like all things, one of the reasons I'm at where I'm at is because people did this with me. And, I was also blessed enough, I did spend a lot of time editing, and that's how I learned a lot of these various things, is because, it's like reverse engineering things. And, watching the dailies just in general is a good component of that, And so if you are in that way, just watch dailies. Yes, that's kind of the takeaway. But even more so, just try to watch footage of yourself in general. If you're even if you're a musician, right? Watch footage of yourself performing, anything of that nature, right? A comedian, watch yourself performing jokes. All this stuff becomes very beneficial to your evolution. So take that to heart. And that's kind of overall the majority of the creative stuff. Of course, there's other things. The holiday break, on a personal level, was very interesting, as I'm sure it was for most of you. Very different this year. Not only did one of my dogs pass away before Christmas, one of my best friends, his dog passed away pretty much right after Christmas, so there was that. I did try to relax as much as I could, but it was, I wouldn't say it was an enjoyable break in the traditional sense, but it was restful and it was needed, and it was good. I made the most of what it was. Let's just put it that way, and I hope you did too. And overall, I'm excited to continue moving forward. Doesn't negate the hardships that have been or remain, but all we can do is the best we can at any given moment. So that's kind of where I'm at currently, and I'll continue to update, obviously, as things go by with new vlogs every week. Thank you for joining me. I hope you got something out of this. If you have any questions about anything, please just ask away. I will certainly be glad to answer it. You can do that in the comment section or hit me up on social media at Svitek. I appreciate you and hope to see you next time.